Alright, so my chapter was Mrs. Wilberforce, chapter 2, from the movie The Lady Killers. And so I started out here with Mrs. Wilberforce being a light purple because I think it represents innocence and purity, while I have a police officer over here, right over there, as blue because it represents noble and honest. And back here I have a mysterious figure because as black because it represents mysterious and dangerous or evil, mischievous, whatever. And then I have Mrs. Wilberforce talking about an alien to a police officer. But I decided that the alien wasn't such a good idea because it doesn't portray a big part of the movie, it's just something she happens to be talking about to retract a statement from her neighbor. And then I changed the police officer so he's more facing Mrs. Wilberforce, as you can see the difference, instead of facing the audience. And then I also changed the figure in the background, and I gave him that professor little smile there, and I changed his hat to be less goofy looking, as you can see. Also, I changed the brim of the hat, and we'll get to that in the next slide. See, here I changed the brim of the hat to have more sharp edges to make him look a little more dangerous. And I also got rid of the smile because we don't know who he is yet. He's just a mysterious figure to us. And I changed his eyes, as we saw in the Molly Bang, to that diamond shape because it looks dangerous. And I also had him purple. That way it'd be so he's looking at Mrs. Wilberforce. And that was my final cut. Oh, I also changed her umbrella to be over in the corner because that's a very important part of the movie later on when she leaves it at the train station. Here is the shop where she placed her ad. And I have the ad up in the corner in this black box over here. And that represents her ad that she took out for renting out her house. And I made the ad purple so you could tell it was hers. And then I added her in and a few more little ads so you can definitely tell it's an ad board. And you can definitely now tell that it's hers. So now I made her a little more prominent that she's at a shop, and I highlighted the ad by adding text onto it. And then finally I added in the mysterious character because throughout the whole scene he's stalking her. And that, again, final cut. Here I have the what's supposed to be a dilapidated house. So I started out with the trapezoidal shape, and I wasn't too big on it because it kind of made it look like the house was going back in space rather than leaning. So I changed it so it was a kind of deformed rectangle with some triangles on top. That way it would look like it was actually leaning. But the doors and windows still weren't quite right. So I changed them to be leaning and I changed them to be Mrs. Wilberforce's colors. That way you could tell that it is in fact her house. But then her face just blends into the house too much, and I didn't get the right feeling from the house because a lot of bad stuff happens in the house. You know, people fall off the roof and get whacked. So I changed the house to black, and I added the mysterious figure because he's stalking her along the street throughout this part of the scene. And then finally, I added a background to it, so it looks like there's almost a drop-off behind the house where they would get rid of the people, put them in the train, and I changed the character to her shadow because in this part of the scene, that's essentially what he is just a shadow following her and just stalking her and being right behind her the whole time. But it kind of looks like it's her shadow, so I added a sun up in the corner, so that way you can definitely tell that it's not her shadow, because if it was, her shadow would be coming along here rather than here. So you can tell that it's not her shadow and it's some malevolent force. And that's my final cut. And then here we have the three together with Mrs. Wilberforce at the police station, losing her umbrella, Mrs. Wilberforce at the ad, checking on it, and Mrs. Wilberforce being stalked back to her house. Any questions?
That the middle icon where the arrow.
Oh, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it was just there. Because I was using it.
You can move that slider on the right-hand lower corner, make it just a little bigger there. That's probably good.
Is that fine?
Yeah, that'll be okay. Let's look at the bottom ones though, because they have the full. Yeah, so we can see all the 3 final scenes at once. Okay?
Oh,
I like how you used the lavender color from Mrs. Wilberforce, but she seems to be blending into the background
yeah.
in the second scene. So I was wondering what could you do to fix that?
Well, I did actually try a darker color, but then it didn't really give that purity sense. It was too deep of a purple, and I didn't think it worked very well, so I decided to sacrifice maybe a little bit of presence to give that more pure sense.
Is there another way you could go about it? It's a suggestion over here.
Okay.
I think that you could almost try outlining just a little bit, just to give it, that way it doesn't blend with the background.
Okay. And you might be able to use a light color, but this one is so light that it's almost hard to detect it against a white background. So that outline would really help that if you use the blue or something to outline.
Okay. Hannah, sorry.
That's fine. You could change your white to gray instead. I feel like that might actually make the scene a little bit darker anyway, because it would add, and you would be able to see the lavender color more against gray instead of white.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments and questions?
Tanya?
I was gonna suggest the white to gray too, and the only thing I did notice was, I don't know if it was just in the last scene, her face, Mrs. Wilberforce's face, has the like darker blue outline around it. I don't know if you just like didn't change that, or if it,
I must have missed that.
yeah, because I know like the default on the
Yeah.
settings does that, so just fix that and it should be good.
Yeah, you want to make sure there's no shadow effect or gradation or anything on the figures in your slides. I want to hone in for a moment on the business with the shadow. Just putting the sun up there still doesn't take away the problem that it looks like her shadow, right? You said you put the sun there, but it still looks like it's her shadow, and we want it to be his shadow. You may need to go back to a more distinctive hat shape on him. And the other thing I think I would consider is making that shadow foregrounded to the point that it isn't all of him, it's just the hat shape. Because the hat is what would be, if he were standing very close to us, the viewer, and the sun were coming from behind us, I'd take the sun back out. His shadow would be in between her and us.
But
And you could use the hat.
the thing I was doing is I was making him a shadow. He is the shadow. He's effectively her shadow is what I was trying to get across.
But it doesn't work because we can't tell what it is. You have to tell us. See what I'm saying? And then you have to say that I put the sun there so that you would see that. Well, the sun would make her own shadow stick out there, and she also has a hat. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, kind of.
It makes it even more like it's her own shadow if we know the sun's on the other side of her. And her own shadow doesn't look, you know, the figure that she is, if it were shadow, doesn't look distinctively different from his. So if he's her shadow, you need to put him some other way that you can make his hat really prominent and make sure his hat has a shadow that's different than her own, a shape that's different than her own for the shadow it creates, okay? That's what I'm saying there. So I think you need to think about that there. One of the issues too, I think their eagerness to see gray instead of white is that there is a lot of white. And another way to handle that is just to cut down on the white by, shrinking it in some way, But gray certainly would work there. The problem you would come into if you make a gray is you need to make sure it's different enough from your blue and this lavender you're using to that it really does seem to be a different color. What other questions and comments do you have?
For the shadow part, if you wanted to keep like the sun to like represent that it's not her shadow, maybe move her a little closer to the door, kind of like it looks like she's going into the house, and make him like off to the like behind her kind of, so it's like following her, but the sun is like shining at her at that angle.
Okay, so
If you understand.
put her over here and bring the shadow around towards this way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you may have to give up on your notion that the shadow is somehow, that you're saying he's shadowing her by making him her shadow. Because actually that's less ominous than what we really would feel if somebody were being shadowed. You follow what I mean? Because then the shadow size is determined by things like the size of the person. Whereas you can make a shadow much bigger if it's a menacing shadow, if you're keeping it a separate figure that is acting as a shadow. A little bit of problem with trying to keep the notion of menace there.
Why did you leave so much open space in your final slide?
This one here?
Yeah.
Because the house is on a cliff, and they always throw the people over the cliff, so I wanted to show that there was that cliff there.
No, I mean like with the white, it's so open.
Oh, down
Did you
here?
add something?
Down here I did it just so it would seem a little more ominous, that was my reasoning. Any more questions?
I think we could have fixed the perspective a little bit on like the windows.
Okay. Yeah, get it a little more slanted, right?
Because they don't line up with like the door, like it's slanted the wrong way almost.
Okay.
Okay, one more thing.
I actually really like how you made the house so crooked because I could tell like from watching the movie and then watching or seeing your slides that like that is her house because it was so crooked and everything in it, like the picture frames, the windows, like you just kind of think of them as crooked even though like say in the real house the windows wouldn't be that crooked, but I think I like the way you brought it in there just to make it look so kind of messed up.
Thank you.
Okay, good effort to call on people by name. Didn't quite get all of them, but you made some effort there. You need to watch when you're presenting that you don't keep drifting away from the projected area because then that causes the audience to have to look back and forth like it's a tennis match. But I think it's a good start for our first one. Okay, thank you.